Oh my god, the emotional damage. Hello and welcome, you beautiful bookish people. Today we're in a little bit of a new setting. I just set up my reading chair. It's amazing. It is a little swivel chair that I just found on Amazon, and it's got a cup holder. So what more could you want? And I'm planning to do a little gallery wall behind me too to make it like extra pretty, but for now this is what we're going with. But we are here to wrap up all of the books that I read in May, and it was a really good month. Granted, I did have 2 DNFs, but everything else was 4.5 stars and above. Oh my god! And I also deviated from my regular like fantasy stuff this month because I needed palette cleansers. So I read 2 mafia romance and 2 dystopian books. So we'll get to those. But let's start with the first book that I picked up this month. The first book that I picked up this month was A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan, and unfortunately this was a DNF. I DNF'd at about 30%. Let me tell you what it's about so I can kind of like get to the part where I'm like, this doesn't sit right with me. This story is about Tamsin, and she is a whipping girl for a certain royal family, which basically means she takes the physical punishments for the princesses of the royal family, and she gets to live in the castles treated like a princess, but is only really a princess by name alone. So basically she's like a scapegoat.
And a scapegoat.
So she gets arranged to be married to a general of the armies of the north of wherever they are. So basically this army has done a really good job about keeping their enemies from the north from entering the country, but the thing is they're not really like involved with them all that much. It's kind of just like, hey, thanks for the protection, bye-bye. But the general is like, hey, no, like let's actually make an alliance because I'm not just gonna keep doing this for free. So this general basically says, hey, to solidify our alliance, I want to marry one of the princesses. And now he doesn't have a very good reputation in their society. He's almost viewed as kind of like a barbarian, and so nobody actually wants to marry him, and they don't want to give up their perfect princesses to marry this guy. So they tell Tamsin, they're like, hey, we're gonna marry you to him, but we're gonna disguise you as one of the real princesses, and you're supposed to keep your veil on for the whole ceremony, for the consummation and everything, and after the marriage is consummated and set in stone, then you can reveal who you are. Now, there is a whole very cringy scene of the consummation, and it really rubbed me the wrong way because she's obviously keeping this veil on and he doesn't know who she is, and they finish and everything, and then he rips off her veil, finds out that she's not one of the actual 3 princesses, and then he reaches over, grabs her braid, wraps it around his hand, and pulls her toward him in a way that, like, I don't know, it did not seem right, because also she's expressed during these whole scenes that she's very hesitant, does not want to do this, she's scared, she's nervous, she like borderline non-con, and then he does that, and given her history of being the whipping girl and being abused, and then he goes out and like yanks her forward by her hair, I was like, no, not for me. So I DNF'd this one. It could have been a cool story, that crossed the line for me. Now this next one, oh my god, I'm so excited about this one. This is The Wind Weaver by Julie Johnson, and the first book was my Fairy Loot edition. This is also Fairy Loot edition, but I picked this up because I was working on a vlog getting through some of the Fairy Loot books that I have not read yet, and this was 4.5 stars. Oh my god. This gave me everything I was looking for from this book, from the fantasy book, and I didn't hear a peep about it on social media, so I went in like pretty much completely blind. But this book is about Raya Fleetwood, and she is a fae in her society where they don't like fae. Being a fae means you're gonna be executed. So literally in the first chapter, she's on her way to the gallows and she gets stopped by Commander Scythe, and he notices a certain symbol on her chest that marks her as a remnant, which is basically a powerful elemental fae, but there's only 4 remnants in the entire world, and she is the wind remnant, hence the Wind Weaver. And so he decides he's gonna rescue her from the gallows and take her back to his land, because in his land the fae are accepted. It is a nicer society than what she lived in, and she is not told very much, so it's really interesting, like on her journey to get to this certain land, she's finding out a ton of stuff, she's meeting new people. This is almost like a captor-captive trope, which is really nice. The banter is amazing. amazing. He trains her, she fights, she's uncovering secrets. There is another remnant that she gets to meet that is, oh my god, he's amazing. And if you liked Avatar: The Last Airbender and When the Moon Hatched, you're gonna love this. This was very reminiscent of like Avatar's sort of powers, and like the way that the magic works was very similar. But as far as the story goes, it's like not that, but still, you need to pick this up. The next book that I picked up was also a DNF, and I'm not even gonna lie to you, I DNF'd this at like 80% or something crazy. This is the Starlight Heir by Amalie Howard, and I really wanted to love this because the story is super interesting, which let me tell you what it's about and then I can tell you why I DNF'd. This book is about Soraya, who is a bladesmith, and she has a power in her blood that is blessed by the stars to where she can imbue certain weapons with this basically star power. But she's not actually fully aware of her powers at the beginning of this book, so she actually receives an invitation to basically these marriage trials for the hand of the prince of the realm that they're in, and she goes to these trials and basically figures out like, oh crap, like I have these powers, this is what's going on. This marriage trial was actually a cover-up for them trying to find the Star Keeper, which is the girl said by prophecy to have the power of stars in her blood, and so she's like,
oh my god, I need to run away.
So she ends up running away with the prince's brother. But yeah, I know that sounds really interesting. It sounds cool. But here's where I couldn't deal with it. There were phrases like, all right, let me start listing them off. Egg donor, resting bitch face, beast mode, goals, thick thighs save lives, and there's probably a couple other that I'm missing, but I dipped out when she said egg donor. Like literally there was a scene that was happening. She's like, the only person that's gonna miss you is your egg donor. I'm like, guys, it could have been so good, but the writing really took me out of the story, and I know I had like not even 70, 80 pages left. I just could not do it. I felt like I was wasting my time. I felt like I was trying to push through. And then I was like, this language is taking me out of the story, and instead of enjoying the story, I'm sitting here cringing the whole time, which is so frustrating. I wish I could have enjoyed this more because it sounds really interesting, but also like at one point it felt like nothing was happening. I don't know. Not for me. This next book that I picked up, A Fadington Blood by Danielle Jensen. This has been on my TBR for so long, but I decided to put it off because the sequel came out like 2 weeks ago in May, and I really wanted to read it like back to back because I was planning to read this by itself, but I had put it off for so long that I was like, well, by the time I'm ready to read this, it's probably gonna be close to the release. So I'm actually glad I waited so I could binge it because it is a completed duology now, which is really nice. But let's get into it. 5 stars. I could not get enough of this book. This book is about Freya, and she is a shield maiden who is blessed by the goddess Helene to basically fend off any attack against her, like she can protect herself. And this is a very coveted power because it is said in ancient prophecy that the shield maiden either has the power to doom the realm or unite it. And it's a very misogynistic society, so the fact that this is a girl that's like said to take over the world basically doesn't sit well with a lot of the jarls and the kings and everything that are in this realm. So there is one jarl who thinks he's the one that's destined to rule Scotland, and so he decides to bind her to a blood oath, basically saying that she can only serve him, and so he wants to control her to unite Scotland. It's a good thing for the country to be united, but like he's really controlling about it. But anyways, she is bound to this jarl and then starts training her magic once she realizes she has magic with his son Bjorn. And yes, there's romance. It is so good. I just had such a fun time with this book because it had so many details from Norse mythology just packed in here, and I am a super huge fan of Norse mythology, so I was like giggling every 2 pages at the mention of something. But she gets to train her magic. There's battles, there's definitely secrets and some betrayal, which is crazy, but the way that the magic system works within Norse mythology, like like connects the gods to the powers that their children have. Like it's so good. And I know that there's this like, I don't know if it's controversial on Book Talk, but it's one of those like polarizing books that you either love it or hate it. And I loved it. I kind of went in blind and I'm glad that I did. But this was an incredible read, super easy to read. It's like a little over 400, well, yeah, it's about 415 pages. It's not hard to read. I loved this so much. Naturally, I picked up A Curse Carved in Bone next, also by Danielle Jensen. Obviously, it's the sequel to the book I just talked about. And I won't get into too much detail about what this one's about because I don't want to spoil anything. Obviously, it's hard to tell you, like, this book is about A, B, and C. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know about B and C. You know about A, but you don't know about B and C. Anyways, but somehow this was better than the first book. I don't even know how it was, it just was. I highly recommend this. If you don't want like a super long commitment to like a huge series, but you want something that's easy to read that's still really, really good, and it does wrap up nicely. So I definitely recommend this duology. 5 stars, 5 stars. Now this is where I deviate from the fantasy. I read a mafia romance book called The Predator. Now, I read this on Kindle Unlimited, so I don't have a physical copy here with me, but I felt like a lot of the fantasy books that I was reading were sort of blending together. And granted, I rated all of these books that I actually finished super, super high. So it wasn't necessarily that I was reading bad things. I think I was just getting a little burnt out of similar aspects, I guess. I don't know. You understand the concept of a palate cleanser. I needed something to reset a little bit because I promised my sister that I would start the Hunger Games because I want to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping. But I was like, before I get into that heaviness, because I know it's gonna be heavy, let me pick up a mafia romance. So I took this recommendation from Larry Reed's Larissa Campusano on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. She's everywhere. She's amazing. And she reads a lot of mafia romance. And so I'm like, okay, I don't read a lot of that. So I'm gonna trust her. And I picked up The Predator by RuNyx. And this was 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much. Was it a literary masterpiece? No. Was it cliche? I mean, yeah, but that's like, what do you expect from a mafia? Like, that's kind of what you're supposed to expect going into a mafia romance. It's not like the most groundbreaking story ever, but it's just good. It was a good time. This story is about Morana Vitalio, who is the daughter of a mafia boss, and she's like super, super smart, and she's really into computers, and she built this code that could basically take down and disassemble these major like organized criminal activity organizations, basically other mafia families and other criminal organizations out there. But the problem was she only had 1 copy of the codes, and they were stolen by her ex-boyfriend, who was seemingly hired by this guy named Tristan the Predator Kane. And so she's like, oh my God, if this is used on my family, if it's used on some other organizations, this could be a real crap show. And I'm the one responsible. So she goes and she infiltrates Tristan Kane's house and like threatens him. And she's like, hey, give me back the codes. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Only to find out that he doesn't actually have the codes. He didn't hire this guy. So instead of just like parting ways because they are from rival families, if you associate with them, it's like you're gonna get in trouble. But they're like, let's secretly find these codes. Let's figure out who stole them, what they want them for, whatever. So they team up, and obviously there's romance. Obviously it's spicy. It's a good time. And the plot was actually really good. Like, I wasn't expecting there to be a lot of plot, but also like it kind of felt like a mystery almost with some of the investigations and like undercover stuff they do. But I highly recommend this as a palate cleanser. I mean, not even as a palate cleanser, just go read it. Like, it's so good. This is where the month gets like, it didn't go downhill, it went uphill, but like, oh my God, the emotional damage. Obviously, I know this story. You probably know the story. Obviously, this is a very, very popular book. You've probably watched the movies, you've probably read the books, whatever. So I'm not gonna go into detail really about what this is about. If you wanna look it up, you can look it up. But I wanted to read this so I could pick up some of the details from the prequels, because I have not read either of the prequels so far. I've just read the original trilogy, but it was like 10 years ago. And little teenager me, oh my God, I realized how bad my reading comprehension was. Either that or I was just like so oblivious oblivious to what this story was actually about and like the little nuances. But I picked up so many things this time around, and my jaw was on the floor the whole time with how Suzanne writes so masterfully. There's no fluff in this. A lot of this is Katniss's inner monologue. There's actually very little dialogue, which is really interesting, but she writes so to the point. But the impact is still very large. Like, it's not like she just says something and moves on. Like, she says something and then like you're forced to pause because in the next sentence there's something else that's going on. It's very fast paced, and you have to go into this expecting not just a fun, silly, goofy time with trials, because it's not a fun, silly, goofy time. But the importance of this book cannot be overstated. And it's such a good feeling when it leaves you thinking at the end of the book. And again, I know the story, so it was really easy to read, and also the font is pretty large, but I had the best time with this. Okay, we're gonna take a break because now I read another palate cleanser because of how damaged Hunger Games left me. I picked up The Reaper, which is the sequel to The Predator by RuNyx. I read this in one sitting. Dude, that has literally never happened to me before. I have never sat down, started a book, and finished it. Like, I'm not that fast of a reader. Granted, I'm probably a little bit faster than normal. I read like 60 pages an hour, but I devoured this book. Needless to say, it was 5 stars. Oh, did I mention the Hunger Games 5 stars? I think that was kind of a given. But The Reaper was 5 stars. The plot like got so crazy in this book, and I was like whiplash almost because so much was happening. And granted, yeah, it's spicy, but it's a slow burn in the sense that they're not like admitting their feelings to each other because he is so damaged and she is so lonely kind of thing. Oh my god, it's so good. And this actually felt really good to read because this is part of a series that I think is 6 books long, but the first 2 books are about Tristan and Marana, but the next couple books, 2 books, whatever, are about a different couple. So their story like kind of ish, it doesn't come to an end necessarily, but there's like a little bit of closure because like the plot that started in the first book was like pretty much over. So I'm excited to see how the next book goes on. But again, I'm not gonna go into too much detail. I'm not gonna give you too much detail on like the tropes or anything because I don't want to spoil that either. But things got crazy. That's all I have to say about that one. The last book of the month was a 5-star read. It's Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This is my favorite of the trilogy. I actually just finished Mockingjay yesterday, but it's also already June, so I can't exactly include I started it in May, but I finished it a couple days ago. But anyways, I loved this book so much. And I say all the time that I'm kind of burnt out on books with trials, but I think Suzanne does it in a way where, yeah, sure, the like surface level plot of the first book is the Hunger Games, is the trials, but there's so much more going on, and the books are really about the implications of decisions of people in the government in relation to the Hunger Games and controlling the districts, how the games control the districts, why they do it, what it means for these characters, and you really explore what it means for these characters in this book, which is so interesting because I feel like a lot of other books, they'll just like have the trials and then the next book is about something completely different that like doesn't have to do with the trials, and you're like, well, that was the whole plot, and it kind of like takes you out of the story, but this keeps you in the story. And she dives so deep into the real narrative of what's going on in their society, and it's a huge turning point for the characters, for the whole country really, but it doesn't feel like a filler book, which is oh my god, it's so good. It's also my favorite movie out of the 3, so that opinion could change as I read the next 2 prequels, but we shall see. That is all, my friends. I read 7 books. I picked up 9. But thank you so much for watching. If you have any more mafia romance books, please leave them in the comments because I'm eating those up, and I will see you next time.